So let's start with what natural nutrition actually is. It has been quite popular as an eating style, but really it's the original eating style. Before we had definitions or put our eating styles into different boxes, everybody ate naturally. Human beings ate what was grown locally, what was seasonal, what grew from the earth, or what we could raise in our environment. So our concept is going back to the idea of eating for how we were designed as human beings. And when you eat foods that come from a natural environment, your body recognizes those foods, which means that these foods are generally free of artificial ingredients like additives and potentially dangerous colors and flavors and preservatives that maybe they have usefulness in the food as far as extending shelf life and adjusting the flavor or making it pretty. But once they're inside our bodies, they can be potentially harmful. So we are removing these foods from our eating and instead eating foods that are whole, natural, and good quality, meaning that they, as much as possible, are free from pesticides, herbicides, genetically modified ingredients, etc. The other part of natural nutrition is that when we look at symptoms and health, we see the whole person. So rather than fragmenting that person, like you have a symptom and you try and find a treatment or a remedy for that symptom, instead we try to dig deeper. What is causing that symptom in the first place? And then how can that symptom relate to other parts of that person's body or mind? Sometimes it's related to their mental health or their mood or their stress levels. And what is the origin of that symptom in the first place? In our program, we talk quite extensively about the different body systems, how they interact with one another. And so this is the premise of our program, is to look at the whole person and figure out a diet or an eating style that is best suited to that particular individual. That particular diet may not work for anybody else in the world because every body is different. So we are learning how to design and customize a program that is not just a diet, but also lifestyle and physical fitness, etc. We'll get to that in a couple moments for that unique individual.
Yeah, and Lynn, I think we've all had conversations about how we want to be mindful of how our food choices impact our environment. And that's becoming so much more important with climate change. So as part of our natural nutrition philosophy, we do consider our food choices, for example, with organic, the type of organic farming, the way they store the land, the soil, the water is different than conventional farming. So that is something that we are very mindful of throughout our program.
Well, as the quote says on this slide very well, like, don't eat anything that your grandmother wouldn't recognize. And I think that the more we start to connect back to natural nutrition and what that means, it's just going back to what we were eating prior to industrialization, which
Absolutely.
I think people have a hard time understanding like how that's going to affect us in a modern day world. However, I think it's something that we're all starting to recognize. It's like the more we start to eat these processed foods, the more we kind of step away from this natural way of eating for the human body, the worse the health of our human, species actually becomes. And so this is kind of how our program, I think, is set up, is to kind of address our connection to how food relates to us, but then also how it relates to nature and our connection with it as well.
Absolutely. And I mean, there are so many stats now that show our diets have switched from a traditional diet to processed and even ultra processed foods. And that, the majority of our foods now are coming from ultra processed food sources, which are low in nutrients. And, therefore we're getting a lot of deficiencies, which can lead to a lot of these health problems down the road. What we're putting into our body is super important. And that's one of the focuses, obviously, of our Natural Nutrition Coach program.